Welcome to me deciding on how to make this dress happen. I am Elizabeth and I will be your tour guide for this dress. Just kidding. But seriously though, it was a bit of a trial and error while putting this all together, trying different things to see if they worked or not. For example, I thought at first I would just seam rip the entire top off and decided that it actually was more complicated to do it that way. And what I didn't show, actually my video went weird, was that I ended up actually just cutting it, and I cut the bodice off at the top of this skirt because the seam ripping was proving to be much too difficult. I did seam rip a little bit of the underskirt away from the zipper so that I could cut the underskirt off enough to have a band, because I thought I could turn this into almost like a petticoat. After I went ahead and cut out that petticoat section, I held it up to me to measure where I wanted the length to be. Originally it was a floor length dress, and so I knew I wanted it about to my knees, or shortly, or a little bit below, I would say. And the thing with me is I like to measure about 5,000 times before I cut, because I have cut a few too many things too short and then was regretted it later. So that's why it takes me a minute to lay it all out flat and then measure it. I decided to measure from the bottom up to get a good length from it. I think it was about 16 inches I cut off the bottom. I used chalk to mark where I wanted it to be, and then I went back and cut actually below that line, because again, I was very paranoid that I would cut it too short and that would be the end of that, and I was more worried about that than having plenty of material actually. For the bodice, I used this Simplicity 1950s vintage pattern. I chose bodice C for this because it had the shape I was looking for. It also could be removable straps, but I chose to keep them on instead of changing out the straps. For my layout process, I didn't follow the pattern directions just because my piece of material was a lot smaller in a different shape, and I was also using two different layers, so I wanted to make sure I cut them exactly the same. So I just cut it out the way that I thought looked best and the way that used the least amount of fabric possible so that I would have plenty. For the next several steps, I actually just followed the directions, so putting the bodice together just like the directions said, starting with adding the darts and putting those two pieces together and just following along to what the pattern said to do. Since my outside material has like this velour type material on it, I chose to use my apron actually as a press cloth so that I could press those darts down. So just something to keep in mind if you have anything like that as well. Continuing on through the pattern, it has this cool little flap on the front. I don't know a better word for it. I was going to call it a ruffle, but it's not really a ruffle either. And it just goes along the top of the bodice, and it adds just a really cute little extra design. So for the rest of the bodice, I went ahead and just followed the directions. I'm not going to show everything because we would be here all day, but it was a pretty simple pattern to follow. I really liked it, and I might even actually end up making a regular bodice out of this as well. So after I put the entire bodice together, including the lining, I went ahead and pinned it to my skirt so that we could create a nice smooth finish between the top and the skirt. Next, I'm going to go ahead and iron a little bit of the lining so that I can pin it down and create a seamless effect inside so that there's nothing sticking out or poking me, which is always important when wearing a dress. You want it to be nice and smooth and silky. So as you can see, I have it all pinned. And also I ran out of material of the blue to create the lining, so as you can also see that one side is black, one side is blue, but it's the same type of material. So I opted to hand stitch the lining shut, so I'm just using basically like a little invisible catch stitch all along the edge of that bodice. after that is done, we're going to move on to straps. So for my straps, I used some of the black material, and I created the long tubes, and then I ended up pinning them instead of just at the top. And then to create a halter, I pinned it down the side of the bodice and up to the top of the bodice a little bit. It'll show better in the picture. Unfortunately, with such dark material, it's hard to show you the details. So I'll make sure to take a good picture for you guys. I went ahead and hand stitched those on just because I didn't want to stitch the lining as well as the straps. To finish off the bottom of the skirt, I used my serger, and I serged both the top see-through layer and then the bottom liner layer, and it worked great. It made it all nice and smooth. After I serged both the top and bottom layers, I used my regular sewing machine, which you will see shortly, to flip up the hem. To finish off, I actually ended up reapplying the crinoline underneath because it looked better with it on. You know, hindsight's 20/20. But I'm very pleased with how well this dress turned out and super excited to wear it to Dapper Days. So I hope you enjoyed watching me make this video, and stay tuned for a few pictures and a video of the dress itself. So I will see you guys next time. Bye!